The Brock Purdy MRI results are in, and for the moment, it appears as if he and the 49ers avoided disaster. Plus, what is going to be the fate of defensive coordinator Nick Sorensen? We'll talk about it all on today's Bully Ball podcast. What is good, everybody? Welcome to the Bully Ball podcast on the Gold Standard and the Fans First Sports Network. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. She is Steph Sanchez. I'm pinch hitting for Jason Aponte. What's up, Steph?
What is going on? Good vibes despite the 49ers, holidays. It's New Year's, New Year, new me. I'm just kidding. I don't do any New Year's resolutions. What about you, Rob?
Why should I change when it's everybody else that sucks?
Perfect answer.
Exactly. All right, let's just jump right into it. We got a lot to get to, not a lot of time to cover it. We'll start with the biggest news of the day. The Brock Purdy MRI results are in. Here is Kyle Shanahan from today's conference call.
Brock Purdy had a right elbow contusion with nerve inflammation. Most likely going to miss this week, but no long-term issues. UCLA is fine. UCL looks fine.
Good to know Brock Purdy has a fully functioning UCLA in his right elbow. Thanks, Kyle. So yay, I guess. Although, Steph, I got to wonder, this seems like, again, they're very vague with this stuff. Nerve inflammation. I don't know. Hopefully it's good. And hopefully that's all it is. But I can't help wondering if, like, a month from now we hear, Brock Purdy's nerve inflammation, it wasn't dying down. He went back for a second look, and it turns out his arm's going to fall off.
Well, yesterday, Kyle was even more vague by saying nerve stuff. So I'm glad today we got at least a little more color as to what's going on with Purdy. But yeah, like that was definitely concerning, right? Especially when you see the look on Brock's face on the sideline yesterday. He couldn't grip the ball. Very reminiscent of the NFC Championship game when he had to go out and was trying to throw on the sidelines. He just couldn't. And you saw that on the sideline yesterday as well. I'm going to just trust that this is correct. Desi, who joins me on my show, sometimes she's a physical therapist, and she doesn't have major concerns about this. In fact, she did say like the nerve stuff could happen, especially if after the surgery they don't quite place certain nerves or something like that in certain where it's supposed to. Breaking news, Jay here.
Jason Aponte is watching the show, his show. I am hosting for him, and he is here. He just left a comment. I'm here. Do you want me to send you the link? Please feel free to hop in.
That'd actually be fun. All three of us,
He also says, "I love Moody." This is his clue. He must be held hostage somewhere. That's the clue. Right now, we have to go save
Blink
Jason.
Twice.
Right. That is very, very sketchy. Thanks for hopping in, Jay. Appreciate it. I agree with you. Like, it's a little upsetting. Nerve inflammation to an area that's already been surgically repaired. That makes me a little nervous. Just take a listen to how Brock himself described the injury after the game yesterday.
On that sack, I got hit on the backside, and basically just my arm was on fire kind of thing. And so I tried throwing a couple on the sideline, and I couldn't at that point. So, it has nothing to do with tapping out of a game or anything like that. I love my teammates, and I'll go to the very end for them and this fan base and everybody. So that's what hurts me is like I couldn't finish the game. But again, we'll see tomorrow.
When your arm's on fire, is that similar pain to what you had in Philly?
A little bit, but we did some tests with like UCL stuff, and I'm good in that regard, but we just got to go get imaging on it tomorrow and see the whole thing.
So there you go. Arm was on fire. Not really something you want to hear from your starting quarterback.
Well, nerve stuff isn't fun, right? And although it's not long-term serious, obviously he's dealing with the effects of that right now. It is going to have some pain and discomfort, I'm sure, within the next week. And of course, Kyle already said he's not going to be playing the season finale against Arizona. But I guess like the biggest concern for me and probably everyone else, is this going to be a recurring thing? Like okay, we got UCL tear out of the way. Like, it's not that this time around. But is this going to be something that he's going to have to live with? Is this something that he's going to have to be exiting games for, in following seasons? That would be my concern, especially when the contract discussion continues to loom large. And I would even say, like, we were already having some question marks about Brock Purdy's performance after the 2 picks late in this game. I thought he was playing great before then, but after that, it's like, oof, here we go again. This is going to hurt contract discussions. And then he goes and gets hurt. So definitely not ideal for Purdy, and he's not going to have a chance to go back out there and try to make things right. What we got in 2024 full season and what we got in 2023 full season, that is, I think, the floor and the ceiling of Brock Purdy as we know it right now. And that's how they're going to have to make a decision on how much he ultimately gets paid.
And we got to stop with this. ASIC says Purdy's soft. Let me just tell you, as someone that is currently suffering a nerve issue right now, a pinched nerve in my shoulder, I can tell you it is absolute agony. I still can't lift my arm above my head. That's how badly it hurts. I literally just came from a physical therapy appointment. The idea that Brock Purdy is soft is just, the guy played a game with broken ribs. So we got to just shut that down right now. Nerve inflammation is no joke. Although I did see, speaking of jokes, I did see this tweet from Adela Time 1999 on Twitch who said, did you see John Lynch's nerve inflammation after all the missed assignments on defense? We got a new John Lynch meme, Steph. Pounding the table, Trent Baalke style in the suite.
I think this is the most emotion that we've seen from John Lynch shown during a game ever. And I think he's just like us. Like, he is just as frustrated with the product that he's seen on the field as we are. And I guess it's a good thing because maybe he's reaching a breaking point for some of these things. And one of those reactions came after, I believe it was the 4th down touchdown that the 49ers gave up to the Lions in the red zone. I mean, that's just inexcusable. I can't imagine how frustrated he was, especially him being a former defensive player himself in that moment. So I don't know, maybe he's grown frustrated with Nick Sorensen and maybe he's reached a breaking point.
I mean, last night I was furious. How do you leave Amon-Ra St. Brown untouched, wide open, 4th down and goal, and he catches a pass completely uncontested and just strolls into the end zone like he's taking a walk in the park?
I mean, this is the Lions. It's Ben Johnson. It's all these different players. It's pick your poison. But I felt like the 49ers did do a good job, like particularly on 1st and 2nd downs. They were sometimes mixing some things up with the defensive line, but really it was like 3rd and 4th down where things just got really vanilla for some reason. And especially in the red zone, like, you just can't let that happen. To this point, I've been giving Nick Sorensen a lot of grace because I was like, I feel like the personnel that he's had to deal with, multiple rookies, multiple injuries, especially to the defensive line as well. They're now like finally kind of at full strength at the defensive line, sans Hargrave. But yeah, I mean, I just feel like some of the decision-making with the play calling from Sorensen was kind of inexcusable in this game, especially when you know you're going up against like such a potent offense like the Lions. So we'll see. They'll have some tough decisions to make, I think, across the board. Special teams is another one, of course, but Nick Sorensen, I definitely don't think is in the clear here.
No, absolutely not. I know Kyle gave him the vote of support. Tommy Huxley, watching on YouTube, says Wonderbread Sorensen has got to go. Moody, bye. Look, I wanted to give him grace too because he's not dealing with the same level of talent that Steve Wilkes had or D'Amico Ryans or Robert Saleh. He's just not. It's a much less talented defense. So to expect his defenses to perform at that level, I thought was a little unrealistic. What bugs me though, Steph, and you mentioned it, is on the critical downs, whether it's 3rd down or 4th down, critical point, gotta have it, stops in the game. Not only does the defense fail, most of the time they look confused and there's a coverage bust and a guy is wide ass open. And that, to me, if you have constantly confused players, that is on the coaches.
Yeah, it just feels like there's some fundamental things that are kind of missing. And I think it was It was either Kittle or Warner who said after the game, you have to be able to do like the small little things right to be able to, do the big and fun things. And this defense just still struggling with some of the little things. So one of the big things that they're not getting is turnovers, right? I saw this stat that since the bye week in 8 games, only 2 takeaways from this defense. And that's a huge issue, I think, for this team as well, as not being able to get off the field consistently on 3rd down. So, yeah, just a lot of fundamentals that I think need to be corrected. And I know it's Brandon Staley now who's taking care of the what was the turnover meetings that they have?
Ball meetings.
The ball meetings. It's Brandon Staley. So whatever he's doing, I'd question at this point. But yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, if you fire Nick Sorensen, you're now going 3 consecutive seasons with this defense having to learn a new defensive coordinator. Ideally, you want to keep some of the same stuff, right? But is that also holding you back? And the biggest question is, if you move on from Nick Sorensen, what is a clear upgrade, right? I think Jeff Ulbrich probably going to be out there. I think Robert Saleh probably going to be out there. I would say those 2 guys probably clear upgrades to Nick Sorensen. But if you can't get either one of those 2 guys, then I don't know. Maybe you do just run it back.
Saleh's not coming back. That's never happening. He could have come back this year. He chose to go to Green Bay. Like, I don't think Robert Saleh.
Did the 49ers even ask him to come back this year? We don't know that.
I don't think he wants to work under Kyle Shanahan again. I really don't. Like, Kyle gave him his first job, and that's great. But, I mean, he had his choice to go anywhere. And there wasn't a whiff of him coming back to the 49ers. He was with Green Bay so fast with LaFleur. Wasn't LaFleur in his wedding, too?
Yeah. They're definitely closer than Kyle and Saleh. So, yeah.
Kyle also gets real touchy when his coaches leave. And maybe he, didn't want Saleh back because he was mad that he took the job. I have no idea. But I just think that the idea that Robert Saleh is going to come back and all the problems are going to be fixed, I don't think either one of those things is going to happen. I think they have to get better players, period. Like, better defensive linemen. Like, the scheme, it's vanilla. And like, all that is true. But also, like, just get better dudes. How about that? Like, why don't we just try to reload on the defensive line, especially?
Yeah, I will say, like, Nick Bosa, I thought, had a hell of a game. Like, he was that entire defense, I think, for much of the game. He had 7 of the team's 11 pressures. So a really good performance from him. Couple of negative plays forced as well. I thought Renardo Green looked pretty good. He was the one that kind of looked clueless on the 4th down touchdown to Amon-Ra St. Brown, but he also had a couple of pass breakups that I thought were really good. The one in the end zone to Sam Laporta, that's tough, to do. And then he also had like an open field tackle kind of in the flat. I think it was on Sam Laporta as well. But even so, like, that's very difficult to do when you're in space like that, and to get that tackle, I think, was pretty clutch. So we're seeing some good things. We're seeing silver linings. Like, we already know this season is a loss, right? But I think there's a lot of good things to take from it that hopefully they could build off of next year.
Yeah, look, I love seeing Ricky Pearsall flash last night. I loved it. The one-handed catch by the sideline. He looks like a natural receiver, a natural route runner, a natural catcher of the football. He doesn't, to me, give you a ton of juice after the catch. Like, he doesn't have that kind of innate sort of ability to avoid tackles, but he's really, really good. And hopefully this is like a turning point for him. Steph, I tweeted during the game, who'd have thought that when Kyle dialed up plays for Ricky Pearsall, they'd be passing plays? There were 2 times in that game where it looked like Pearsall was going to throw the ball. One time he actually did. He threw it away. Another time he got a reverse. It looked like he was going to throw it to Brock, but he couldn't really get a handle on it. So he just did the smart thing and kept it. But like, he was featured by Kyle Shanahan in this game. We have been screaming about it. The 49ers went up and down the field in the first half of this game. They scored 21 points. Deebo Samuel didn't have a single target, and everybody should have been fine with it because they were cooking. It was Pearsall. It was Kittle, baby. Hell yes. More of that, Kyle.
Yeah, finally, right? Like manufactured touches for your rookies. I think they also tried to get Jacob Cowing in a couple of times, and Cowing had a penalty on what would have been a positive play. I believe it was for George Kittle. So after that, we didn't see him. But same thing, like kind of happened with Pearsall in previous games, right? Like times where he wasn't really lining up correctly or ran the wrong route, or just little like rookie mistakes like that. Then we wouldn't see him for the rest of the game. But it feels like Pearsall's finally getting his footing a little bit. And I wanted to share this tweet that I saw my regular co-host Jay post, because I know if he was here, he'd probably mention this, that Ricky Pearsall ran 51.3% of his routes from the slot, 48.7% out wide. So, he has that versatility too, where he could be inside, outside. And it was just nice to see the 49ers use him in a variety of different ways. Definitely want to see more of that. And, what I thought was interesting is that early in the game, I believe in like the first drive, there was a lot of Deebo, right? Yeah, there was a lot of manufactured touches for Deebo. And I almost thought to myself, I feel like this is a showcasing of sorts, and maybe that's just me projecting my own thoughts and biases at this point. I saw someone else think like, oh, like Deebo's definitely on the team, next year because of that. And I don't know. I just still kind of feel like the way that the rest of the game went with Pearsall getting so much involvement, it's like we don't need Deebo as much anymore. We got Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah, and then next year, if IU comes back, you're going to need him even less. Like, hey, Deebo, great. You can return the kicks, and you can take a handoff in the red zone on an end around and try to get it. Or technically it was a pass, but whatever. But, yeah, it was absolutely how the offense should go. Those are your guys. And Kyle was getting guys wide ass open yesterday. So open. Kittle was getting open. Pearsall would catch the ball with nobody around him. It was like you could tell Kyle had a little extra juice in this one, just like the Lions did, because they wanted to go out and embarrass the 49ers, which Jared Goff admitted after the game that it was personal to them. Kyle, I'm sure he was tired of hearing about Ben Johnson's offense. I'm sure he was tired of hearing, all the criticisms of him. And they came out yesterday, and I was like dreading the game going into it. And then they came out on offense, and they're going right down the field, and I'm like kind of getting into it more and more. I'm like, holy crap, the defense isn't going to stop them, but they might not stop us either.
It was a scoring palooza for like much of the first half, and really like most of this game actually. And yeah, it was kind of cool to see like both of these play callers go back and forth, try to one up each other a little bit. Yeah, it was definitely nice to see. I know a lot of people were a little frustrated by the fact of, oh, Kyle waited this whole time to get his best play calling performance in this game. That means nothing. Look, I always say that Kyle Shanahan strikes me as a rhythm play caller. Like the play before it has to be successful for the play after it to be successful, sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And you need to be able to stack your plays a little bit. And the 49ers, much of this season, haven't been able to stack their plays because they get penalties, they lose yardage sometimes, blocking's not great. So, like, it's just been a lot of negative plays I think have hurt Kyle Shanahan's regular rhythm. So I think in this game, it was nice to see the offense just clicking on all cylinders. You didn't see like careless penalties. You didn't see them get behind the sticks all that much. And it was great to see. I think the other takeaway, of course, is that the Detroit defense, those injuries are catching up. Woo. I was looking at the Pro Bowl voting for the NFC, right? And there's a lot of there's some 49ers. There's a lot of Detroit players, of course. I think that both of them are going to have so much fun at the Pro Bowl this year. And I mean that by saying, I don't think this Lions team gets to the Super Bowl with the way that their defense looks right now. If this 49ers battered and bruised offense was able to like march down the field as many times as they did against this defense, yeah, it's going to be bad for them. But, from a 49er fan, I think it felt good to just kind of see a semblance of a capable offense again.
Right. It's in there. It's there still. We know
it's always there. Yeah.
They have to find the consistency. I thought that Brock made some tremendous throws. Unfortunately, I mean, the interceptions are just baffling. But I want to get to this first before we talk about that, because I've seen this. JP Hellahard 2800 talks about this, and this is David Lombardi trying to stir up some stuff. JP says 16 straight passes is ridiculous, though. The people that are trying to sing the whole Kyle Shanahan got Brock Purdy hurt narrative, it absolutely drives me nuts. And it started with Lombardi's tweet, which I immediately called out afterwards. They had 16 straight passes. Yeah, David, because it was working. They were crushing the Lions. And Isaac Rendo was running for less than 4 yards a carry. So just to say, 16 straight passes, that's automatically bad. That's on Kyle Shanahan. First of all, we don't even know how many of those were originally runs that Brock canned into passes. We don't know how many of those Brock should have canned into runs. Like, I just cannot stand the narrative that coaches are responsible for injuries. That's just not how it works.
Not just injuries, but like turnovers, right? Like that was a mistake by Purdy. And it was a great play by Kirby Joseph, especially the second one. He was sitting on that one. Like he couldn't have been standing more still, even after the snap happened. Like he was just sitting there waiting for it, and a great defensive play, but Purdy has to see him and has to know that he can break on that. And, that's what happened. As far as like the consecutive passes, 16 consecutive passing attempts, there was one point in this game Purdy was 14 of 16 at halftime. He was 14 of 16, 212 yards and 3 total touchdowns. So, yeah, I mean, he could do it, right? And especially against this Detroit defense, they were carving them up. So why not continue to go with what was working for you? I mean, I think we've seen this in other games too, right? Where it's been the opposite. It's been like, Kyle, like the run was working. Why did you go away from the run, right? And now we're saying, Kyle, the pass was working. Why would you go away from the pass? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Or why would you go away from the pass? Like, yeah, it just doesn't. That was on Purdy. I think we just gotta take that one. And it wasn't just one, it was 2 picks that, definitely could have been avoided in this game. The other one, he just sailed the pass. And that one was very strange too, because it just didn't look like he stepped into that throw. It was a clean pocket. Ricky Pearsall was wide open. That's inexcusable. So again, like why blame Kyle Shanahan? And Kyle looked livid. On the sideline too. We got some emotion from him after one of those, and you see him like yelling, covering his mouth, of course. He's a veteran as a coach, covering his mouth. But yeah, I mean, I think that tells you it was on Purdy. I mean, even Kyle seemed to be really frustrated on that one.
I mean, the first interception, like, I don't understand, Steph, how he could make such good throws. That dime that he drops to Isaac Rendo with the pocket closing in around him, it's a perfect throw. It's beautiful. Some of the throws he made to Kittle over the middle of the field were great throws. The touchdown pass to Ricky Pearsall was a nice throw, a really good throw. And then he has that first interception where it's a clean pocket. There's nobody around him, and he completely airmails it. Like, that can't happen. For all the crap that people gave Trey Lance for the way he would just spray balls all over the place, that was a Trey Lance type throw, like where he just rears back to throw and he doesn't know where it's going. No control over the ball whatsoever. And I don't know how you could be so accurate on some throws and completely biff that throw. And it was crippling to the 49ers. And it's the 3rd straight game where the 49ers have had a chance to come back in the game, needing a touchdown. And instead, Brock Purdy, not only does he not get the touchdown, he turns the ball over to the other team. He did it against the Lions. He did it against the Dolphins. He did it against the Rams. It's got to stop. It has to stop.
It's really frustrating. And I think what we've seen is that in moments where we need Brock to be clutch, like he does the opposite. He's been turning the ball over, and you just can't have that. It's backbreaking for this team, and it's kind of concerning, like is this the new normal? Is this who Brock is going to be? Because like we really didn't see that from him last season. There's a lot of things we didn't see from Brock last season that we have this year. So it's kind of, you're not sure what's going to be the new normal. It's kind of like Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Where like he just started making some mistakes and was never quite the same, right? And I saw this stat. Josh Dubow posted this on Twitter. Brock Purdy went down between 1 and 8 points in the 4th quarter or overtime in regular season or playoffs. He's 41 of 72 for 502 yards, 3 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 52.9 passer rating. Like, is this just a product of Brock wanting to do too much? Like, I'm not sure, but it definitely is a thing at this point, right? And it certainly has been a thing this season. This team, the entire team, has had problems with finishing games and giving games away. And, Brock Purdy's been just as guilty of that this season.
Absolutely. And I think he presses, he tries to force the action sometimes. And the thing that I think he hasn't learned to manage yet is there are times where you do need to force the action, right? Where your back's against the wall and you got to just try and go out and make a play. But so many of these interceptions, Steph, have come on first down and second down early in the possession where he's attempting a very difficult high-level throw, and he doesn't need to in that situation. Yeah. He's just getting himself into trouble, and that's a mistake that I think young quarterbacks make. I think it's a mistake that young quarterbacks that have shown a lot of playmaking ability in their career run into often, because they have this belief built up that they can make a play. And a lot of the time they can, but they need to get to the NFL and you need to learn when to sort of flip that switch. And a lot of times with Brock Purdy, he's flipping it before he needs to, and it's getting the team into trouble. And I know it's a small sample, but it's disturbing, man. He had more interceptions in the second half last year than the first half. He's got 6 fourth quarter interceptions this year. 6. And people want to sit there and talk about how Kyle Shanahan blows leads. This is why his quarterback's giving the other team the football.
Yeah, and on the other hand, the defense is not generating turnovers either. So especially when you're in close games like this one, when you're in games where, it's basically whoever makes a mistake first, whoever turns the ball over first is going to be, the one to lose. Like, you just can't have, those back-breaking mistakes like that. But Brock wasn't the only one who made some back-breaking mistakes. And I agree that on, first and second down, you can't afford to have, turnovers, interceptions like that. I could live with those a little bit more if it's third, even fourth down. But how about 49ers, 4th and 10 in Lions territory, and they elect to have Jake Moody, who had already missed a field goal at that point, attempt a 58-yard field goal. I mean, the thought process behind that one was mind-boggling at best, and that one was super frustrating. Say what you want about Jake Moody, but to send him out there on a 58-yarder after he had already missed is like kind of just asking for it.
Thank you so much. I crushed Kyle on the instant reaction show for that last night. It makes no sense. It's asinine. It would be one thing if you had Brandon Aubrey there or peak Justin Tucker, all right? Because at least the field goal would have tied the game at that point. So you could sort of understand it. But you had shaky-ass Jake Moody, and it was from a career-long 58 yards away. That's absurd. You're setting your player up to fail, and you're setting your team up to fail, Kyle. And what's worse is if you kick the field goal and miss, you give the Lions better field position than if you just failed to convert on 4th down, because they take over from the spot of the hold, not the line of scrimmage. None of it made sense. You haven't stopped the Lions at all day, yet you're going to attempt this friggin' field goal, and you've been shredding them on offense all day long, yet you bring out Jake Moody. It was terrible by Kyle Shanahan. But for some reason, Steph, he's way more comfortable with giving the team the ball after a missed field goal than he is after a missed 4th down conversion, and I don't understand why.
I don't know if it was just like wishful thinking and, maybe if he makes this, he gets all of his confidence back and, we can move forward with Jake Moody. But man, like, that just felt like momentum just back to the Lions, right? And yes, there is also the possibility that the Lions stop you on 4th down, but I feel like even that is less like, you can live with that. At least you attempted, instead of attempting a field goal that I think we all knew wasn't going to go through anyway. And so I kind of feel for Mooney. I know that, look, I know he hasn't been good enough to warrant continuing to be on this team. definitely not. The human aspect of it, though, I think I feel for him because I think it's his confidence is shot, and he pretty much said as much in the post game speaking to the media. Which, by the way, I appreciate that he didn't duck the smoke. Like, he spoke with the media. I could think of a couple players this season that didn't want to speak to the media after a bad game. One who told Jake Moody to lock in some weeks ago. And so for Moody to stand up there and, just say like his confidence has not been what it's been. And he said he's at the lowest point he's been since has started kicking. Like that's big. So I feel for him, right? I do think a change of scenery will probably be good for him. I'm not saying like his NFL career is done. There are some guys who, you go to a different team, you don't have the same type of pressure. You can exceed in that. But I think his time in San Francisco needs to be done after this season. And man, like just using a 3rd round pick on a kicker is insane. So I hope the 49ers learn to never make that mistake again and learn to not overvalue the kicking position. That would be one step in the right direction. And Brian Schneider, I'm not done with you yet, buddy, because if I recall, you were the one who slammed the table for Jake Moody to begin with. Do you remember how they tried to sell us on Jake Moody after the pick? And, oh, yeah, like we had him come in for a private workout and we grilled him and he passed all our tests with flying colors kind of thing. Well, that was all Brian Schneider. And yeah, Brian Schneider slammed the table for Jake Moody. And I think that says a lot about Schneider as well and how he needs to be gone after this season. The entire special teams needs to be rehauled. Mitch Wishnowsky can go. Moody can go. Brian Schneider can go. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. That's at the very least one of the things they can do once this season is over to get back to winning some games.
Absolutely. And just for the culture, for the saying of this has been too bad for too long. We're not going to tolerate it. And if you don't get right, you're going to be gone too. You have to have it. You need it. So I think Kyle needs to make those changes. I hope he absolutely does. Deebo had another fumble on special teams last night, which for some reason the refs took like 50 years to figure out that Tatum Bethune had the football and recovered it. That was really
like that should have been a touchdown too.
That would have been
he made out like a bandit. Like no one even knew that he had grabbed the ball and like was gone.
You know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the cartoons when you're kids, when a group of like enemies is beating up a guy and then Bugs Bunny sneaks out from underneath the bottom of the pile, but none of the enemies notices and they just keep punching nothing. That's what it reminded me of.
Hilarious.
Chris Maldonado, YouTube channel member for 19 months. Thank you so much for the support, Chris. If you want to become a YouTube channel member, it's less than $3 a month. You get priority comment response, custom emojis, membership badges. Please support the channel if you can. Chris says, good afternoon. What do you think we'd get for Deebo? I don't know, Steph, what's the market for a slightly used Deebo Samuel?
Yeah, anybody want to lightly use Deebo Samuel? I don't know. I don't know what the market is for him. Hard to say. It definitely wouldn't be anything that you could have gotten for him last season or even the year prior. Man, I would say at best a 5th round pick at best. What would you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be maybe a 4th that could go to a 3rd if you get performance, bonuses or incentives or whatever. I mean, they did get a 4th round pick for Trey Lance somehow. All it takes is one team.
Yeah, true.
I know that there are like ramifications salary cap wise, but I don't want that guy in the locker room, Steph. He is not, when the going gets tough, I feel like Deebo just packs it in unless he's personally himself getting criticized. I feel like he's way more about Deebo Samuel than he is about the team. And I certainly don't want that guy being a captain in the locker room. He should not be the guy that's supposed to be the example to teammates who runs away from the media after he has a bad game and then who tweets on social media about how he's doing just fine and it's everybody else that screws up. And then in the next game drops a surefire friggin' touchdown pass. Like, no, I think that they need a culture change, and I think he's one of the biggest. He's got a lot of influence in that locker room. I don't care about the salary cap ramifications. I want him gone. And I saw Tim Kawakami saying there's a chance that they extend him.
Really?
Really, because of the salary. Yeah, because of the salary cap, machinations and all that stuff. I don't like it, man. I don't like it. I think that they got, George Kittle had a very damning thing. And this is the last thing I want to get to today. I thought this quote by George Kittle was very telling. It was the last thing that Kittle said in his press conference. Here's George.
Coach Shanahan, our coaches, I think they do a fantastic job of coaching us and explaining things, giving us the rules, the things that we have to do. As players, it's the NFL, it's your job. So we need to know how to execute. We need to know what to do. And we just haven't been able to do that a lot this year. And, I don't have an answer. I can't put my finger on it, but it's something to look at. Whether you watch the tape or whether this offseason to look at, it's like, hey, we have to go back to being able to do all the little things right before we can try doing the cool big things well.
Deebo Samuel is not about the little things. He's not about doing the little things right. He's about doing the big things right. But George is right. That's a damning criticism of this team. We got to go back to doing the little things right before we could do the big things well.
Yes, and that was the exact quote that I was referencing earlier from Kittle. Yeah, I just couldn't remember if it was Kittle or Warner. It was Kittle. So, I mean, Deebo didn't come to mind when he said that at all. But, I just think this team is at a point where they need to evolve. I think you pick 2 wide receivers in the last draft, Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing. So you could evolve and move on from, older aging players. And I feel like it's Deebo's time to move forward, or the 49ers to move forward and move on without Deebo Samuel. And I do definitely think, look, as far as the locker room stuff or culture that maybe Deebo's not exactly fallen in line with anymore, I think some of the things you mentioned, Rob, are things I can forgive if he were performing at a high level. I think we could forget that. But I think among everything else, him kind of underperforming, disappointing season for him, it just doesn't rub us the right way how things have gone on with him this season. And, I do think the pneumonia thing probably put him back a bit. But at the same time, I think these next 2 games, and like I said, I think that opening script of this game against the Lions, to me, I thought it was like a showcasing of sorts. And I think next week as well, we see something similar where Kyle is saying, hey, yeah, he's the same guy, come and get him kind of thing. Again, maybe I'm just hoping for that, but I just think you need to move on from a guy like Deebo at this point.
We are in agreement on that one. Again, if you're just joining us really quick, we'll recap the news. Brock Purdy reportedly not seriously injured. Kyle Shanahan said he had an elbow contusion and nerve inflammation. He will not start Week 18. Kyle declined to name a starter for Week 18 because for some reason he thinks Brandon Allen is a thing. Josh Dobbs comes in and immediately scores a touchdown for the 49ers, but Kyle doesn't want to give him the friggin' starting job, whatever. But at least Brock Purdy, as of right now, is not seriously hurt. We'll see. Stay tuned. We know with the 49ers and injuries, things can change in a hurry, but hopefully Brock does not have a serious injury. Hopefully he can have a full offseason to work with Pearsall and Ayuk and all the receivers there. Jacob Cowing, God knows they need to get some throws in. And hopefully he'll be coming back ready to go in 2025. Steph, I hope you have a very happy, safe, healthy new year. Please, everybody, take care of yourself. Take care of everybody else. Do not drink and drive. There are so many services out there that will give you a ride for free. Please. This is the most avoidable tragedy of all time. Please, please, please take care of yourselves.
Yep, couldn't have said it better. And I hope you also have a happy New Year's, everyone in the live chat, everyone listening as well. Stay safe out there. At least the 49ers can't disappoint us on New Year's, so we got that going for us.
Here's to a better 2025. See you tomorrow, guys.
Peace.